Hey, Pat Rigsby here with the Winning Coach, and today we're going to talk about standards beating motivation. Let's get to it. I've been coaching for over 30 years now. I've been leading businesses for over 20 years. And one thing that I've recognized between my own experiences and the hundreds, if not thousands, of coaches that I've paid attention to and studied over that time is no successful coach relies on their performers, their team, their employees coming in and saying, man, I hope they're excited to compete today. I hope they're motivated today. Every effective, successful coach that I've witnessed, every effective, successful leader that I've studied, they've all said, okay, these are the standards. This is what our way looks like. Because, if you rely on motivation's a feeling and feelings are fleeting, standards are sustainable, standards last. And so we want to talk a little bit about what it takes to establish the standards that you need and kind of get away from thinking that motivational pep talk is going to be the difference between long-term success and a lack thereof. See, motivation, like I said, it's a feeling, it's a state. Standards, they're structure, right? And I think that every high performer that I've been around, sure, they've got peak states of motivation. They've got moments where they're maybe a little bit more excited, their energy levels are better, their motivation is driven by some external factor that's probably pretty temporary, but you'll notice time and time again, their success is rooted in the fact that they just kind of fall back to their standards, their expectations day by day. This is who I am. This is how I operate. And I think the hardest thing to do as a coach is to raise and establish and maintain those high standards and get everybody to buy into them and just really evolve and improve the way they operate so that when things get hard, when energy is low, when the environment isn't exactly what you want. Maybe you're an athlete and you're outside, it's cold, it's dreary, maybe you're not as inspired as you might be in perfect circumstances. Maybe in business there's a lot going on outside of the workplace, you got a lot of personal stuff happening. Well, those people, they just kind of fall back to their standards, and they're going to perform at a relatively high level because of that. And again, it's not an easy thing to do. Heck, I'm working diligently with the high school baseball program I'm a part of now to help kind of establish a new standard there. And it's worked because it's new to a lot of young people. It's new to the program. And so I'm excited, but it's a challenge. But we have to accept, like, what gets tolerated, that becomes the standard. And, I've seen people for years that put their core values on the wall, and it all sounds nice. And like, this is our mission statement, or we try to document those things, but really standards are the living, breathing stuff that infuses our organization each and every day. It's how we operate, whether it's how we practice, how we show up for work. It is what we say, this is who we're going to be on a daily basis looks like. And that's a much harder thing to maintain because it requires consistency, it requires perseverance, and those things are hard. I think that anybody with the right pump up speech, the right external motivator, they can be the quintessential winning player, winning teammate in perfect circumstances. But who can be the person who's consistent over time? Who can be the person who perseveres when things get challenging? That's the thing that we really are trying to develop. A lot of times it becomes really easy to just default to blaming the teammate, right? Blaming the player, the employee. I've seen it so many times in the business world, right? We hire somebody out of desperation because a couple teammates leave, your schedule gets busy. So we hire somebody quickly. We may not vet them as much as we should, and we certainly don't onboard them in the right way, and they're not being developed at the level that they need to be developed. And in many cases, they don't even know what being great at the role looks like, right? It's just, we need a stopgap. We need to be able to put that kind of finger in the dam sort of thing. And we set them up to fail. We don't build this environment where this person is going to be successful. And I think we've seen it time and time again. That person comes in, they don't succeed, and we write them off as a bad fit, a bad attitude problem. And we say, okay, we're not going to hire anybody else. We're just going to do it ourselves, which is basically painting yourself into a corner that things are never going to get better. Or on the flip side, when I was coaching in college, we had this really, really strong offensive kind of program. We just had this culture where everybody in our program hit. We led the country, all divisions. There are like 2,500 teams that play baseball in college. And over a 6 year span, we were the best hitting team, statistically in of all 2,500. And I would tell you it had very little to do with me, but it had to do a whole lot with the culture. We had people who expected to hit well, they prepared to hit well, they took their craft seriously, and we would have kids come in, transfers who came in who were pretty ordinary hitters where they had been previously, a different 4 year school, a junior college. And before you know it, they come in here and it just unlocks who they can be because they know what good looks like, right? And they know not only what good on a stat sheet looks like, but they know what preparation looks like at a high level. They know what handling ups and downs look like, which are always a thing as a baseball player, right? Like it's not whether or not you're going to have a bad day, it's whether or not you let one bad day turn into a bad week or a bad month. And, so those people became so much more successful because they got into an environment where they were set up to succeed. And that is what standards look like, where everybody's kind of policing the standard of what they want the organization to be. You don't have to micromanage every little detail yourself over time because your employees are managing some of it. Heck, at some points, your clients are managing some of it because they know what the business is supposed to look like. For years, I've been, a big Disney fan, and it was something that I was always, I think it was symbolic as much as anything else, but you'd hear about Walt Disney walking around and picking up trash as he walked in Disneyland. And then you'd see whoever the current CEO was, if they were walking down the street and there's a piece of trash on Main Street, they would pick it up and throw it in a trash can. And that just became the standard. That's, hey, this is, if I am doing, this is what we all do. And, I think that's the way great organizations work. They know that we are going to always fall to the level of our standards. And those standards are going to dictate how good we are long term. So the goal is to continually raise them, to continually reinforce them, and to make them part of each person's identity. And so if you've been bringing in people into an organization, if you've been trying to, bring people in saying, hey, this is what we need to be successful, understand that they need to be set up to succeed. The the most common thing you'll ever see is a good person being put in the wrong environment and looking like a pretty ordinary person when it comes to what they're capable of, and then all of a sudden you see them switch jobs or switch teams and they become a high performer. And it wasn't the person, right? It was the environment. So you know when you're thinking about this, don't think about, hey, it's always an attitude thing or it's a motivation thing. No, it's a standard thing. And the moment that you kind of make standards the driving force and how you operate on a daily basis, everything changes. So a couple takeaways for you today. So I would tell you that in anything, I don't care if you're coaching youth league baseball, telling somebody what good looks like in their position goes a long way. Like, hey, this is what being really good at second base looks like, and this is how we're going to get you there. Because anything that is an expectation needs to have a standard and it needs to have a system to set whoever's going to play that role up, set them up to succeed. So, what does good look like? Number one. And then two, are we empowering whoever we're putting in a particular role? Are we empowering them to reach that standard of good? Because if we're not, then it falls back to us as leaders. it falls back to us. Did we set them up to be successful? Because sure, motivation can get us all started, but standards are going to define who we are over time.